Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Welcome back to another session, my young friends. This is an additional session to our session on the Buddha's instructions on virtue, sīlakathaṁ. And this is on the scent of virtue, or the fragrance of virtue. And the Buddha says in the Dhammapada verse, he says, the scent of flowers cannot go against the wind, nor the scent of sandalwood, tagra, or jasmine. But the scent of the good goes against the wind. A good person's virtue spreads in all directions. Among all the scents, sandalwood, tagra, jasmine, and lotus, the scent of virtue surpasses all scents. So we're going to go into the story of Venerable Ānanda's question to the Buddha, which is where this saying arises. But a simple way of understanding what the Buddha is saying is that when you have virtue, when you have integrity, then that precedes you. So before you even arrive, people know by reputation that you're a good person. And when you leave a particular place as well, you demonstrate through your virtue that you're a good person, and that lingers after you leave. So when you think about what we like in people, whether they're people who are popular, or whether they're people that we can trust, they're authority figures in our lives, whether they're our parents, our teachers, even our friends, even people we look up to. Often what we genuinely look up to is actually their virtue, their ethics, their integrity. Why we would listen to people is because they have integrity, that they don't harm others, they're not cruel, that they're very generous, willing to give up things. So that's something to bear in mind, that as we develop virtue, we want to become similar to upright, good people that other people can trust, that other people can think of in a good way and praise because of good qualities. And so that's the fragrance that the Buddha is talking about. Another way of looking at it is we get very disappointed when we see the leaders in the world, the authorities, figures in the world, when they don't have that scent of virtue, that they don't have integrity, that they're dishonest, that they lie to our faces, that they cheat and steal and are deceptive, when they kill, when they take intoxicants and behave in a really poor fashion. You know, that's not the scent that we find pleasing, and so we end up not liking that. So it's a very good thing to contemplate that when we think about virtue, although it doesn't seem very cool, the cornerstone of even living in the world is actually based on generosity and virtue. If people are not having any moral code, it's very difficult to live with each other. We become fearful, paranoid, angry, divisive, and all those sorts of things. And no leader can come to the world, or leaders can come to the world, that we have faith in. So there's something very powerful in what the Buddha says as his answer to Venerable Ānanda. And we'll find out a little bit more about why Ānanda asked this question. So in the Gandhajāta Sutta, which is Anguttara Nikāya, chapter 3, discourse number 79, we get more information about where that verse comes from. And it's really this dialogue between Venerable Ānanda and the Buddha. And this is the thing with Venerable Ānanda, because he looks after the Buddha, he gets the opportunity to ask lots of questions. And so one night he was sitting thinking about this question about fragrances. So he was actually thinking about the fragrance or the scent of particular flowers. They don't go against the wind, or do they? And then he was thinking to himself, are there any fragrances or scents that go against the wind, that they'll go in all directions? And so he goes to the Buddha and he says, is there a kind of fragrance that spreads with the wind and against it and both ways? Then the Buddha replies, there is, Ānanda, such a kind of fragrance. And then Ānanda says, so what, sir, is that kind of fragrance? And so Buddha enunciates this by saying, it's when, Ānanda, in some village or town, a woman or man has gone for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. They don't kill living beings, they don't steal, they don't commit sexual misconduct, they don't lie, and they don't take alcoholic drinks that cause negligence. They're ethical, of good character. They live at home with a heart rid of the stain of stinginess. They're freely generous, open-handed, loving to let go, committed to charity, loving to give and to share. Ascetics and Brahmins everywhere praise them for these good qualities. Even the deities, so the devas, they praise them. So when we hear the words of the Buddha, it's really hitting what we were talking about in the Buddha's instruction on virtue, that longer session. It's really reaffirming that when we take these 5 precepts, we're praised by many people, many beings, including the devas, because they like those that are generous, so generosity is included in that, like those that keep the sila, they don't harm others. So when you look at dana-katha and sīlakathaṁ, Buddha is actually saying this is the most wonderful fragrance that spreads throughout the world, and people will praise you because you are upright. And when you think about when we do meditations, such as the one like Gahaṭṭhavandanā Sutta, we do the meditations like what we learned in Metta school, it is going hand in hand with this, because we have the right intention towards the world. We're generous, we give up something we would have had for ourselves and we give to others. And we also are non-harmful and we don't have ill will towards others. That's why we don't break the precepts. So this is a lovely thing to remember. Like when you think about flowers, many of us like flowers, then it's a way of remembering. Now, one of the other things that people normally offer to the Buddha, and when they make offerings, is always flowers. So oftentimes, particularly in the Buddhist culture, you find people making offerings of jasmine flower in particular because of the fragrance. So the reason behind it is actually around virtue, that when you make an offering of flowers that smell really good, that's what you're offering. You're offering the fragrance of keeping sila. And so that's a beautiful representation whenever we offer fragrant smelling flowers to the Buddha, when we do pujas, then this is the reason. We're actually rejoicing in our blessing of keeping the 5 precepts and honoring that it is virtue that has the greatest of the fragrances. There are many accounts in the Buddha's teachings, and those of the Noble Arahants, that confirm how the devas praise and worship the lay people who are virtuous. And there's one particular account where the Buddha was talking to the monks. It's in this Gahaṭṭhavandanā Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. And the Buddha was explaining this conversation between Matali, who's the charioteer, and Saka, Lord of the Devas, so Lord of the Devas of the Tavatimsa Deva realm. And Matali was saying to Saka, those all humbly worship you, those versed in the triple Veda, all the Khattiyas reigning on earth, the 4 great kings and the glorious 30. So who, O Saka, is that spirit to whom you bow in worship? So his question is really, who do you praise, who do you honor, who do you worship? Because many people worship Saka, Lord of the Devas. And then Saka basically confirmed what Matali was saying, that he's worshipped by many. And then he says, I worship those endowed with virtue, those long trained in concentration, those who have properly gone forth with the holy life their destination. I worship as well, O Matali, those householders making merit, the lay followers possessed of virtue, who righteously maintain a wife. So essentially what Saka, Lord of the Devas, is saying is that he worships those that are part of the Sangha, who are training very hard in virtue, in concentration, and they're going towards Nibbana as their final destination. But he also praises householders, those that are making merit. So you make merit by giving, you also make merit by keeping virtue. So he says those who are virtuous, he also praises and worships, and those who lead their householder life, whether they take a husband or a wife and have a family. So when you hear this, you think, wow, the devas also, they look on these good qualities. So when we think about dhanakatha, sīlakathaṁ, so giving and keeping the precepts and training on this path, then we are worthy of this praise from the devas. So it's very interesting that the different aspects that the Buddha teaches, they are seen very, very highly by other beings in the world. And when you read from the Vimanavattu, so this is the book that talks about the celestial mansions in the heavenly worlds, then you listen to the accounts from Venerable Mahamoggallana in particular. He would travel using his psychic abilities to these different realms, and he would come back after asking questions of the beings there. Why did they get this particular mansion? Why did they have a radiance and a particular glow about them? And he would ask them questions about how they actually came to be reborn in the Deva realm, and with such a lovely set of circumstances. And most often you would find that they were very generous. They kept the precepts, they observed the moon days, they did things like that. And it's a bit like when we went through in our main session about Buddha's instructions on virtue, and we talked about Chatta and his celestial mansion. So the young boy, and the only thing that he remembered doing was taking refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha on that particular day that he died, and also observing the 5 precepts, having had the explanation from the Buddha. So only a very short time. And so when you hear that, you realize actually there's a lot that can be done simply by being virtuous, and simply also by being generous. So I'll leave this short little session here. We can share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Wishing you well, my young friends. Theruwan saranai.